Welcome to Space Mysteries, your trusted source for breaking headlines, global insights, and sharp analysis from around the world. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. The Supreme Court chamber was silent, but the stakes were enormous. For years, a storm brewed over who truly controls America's trade policy, the president or Congress. The Trump administration's sweeping tariffs rattled global markets and ignited fierce debate at home. Businesses, caught in the crossfire, faced higher costs and disrupted supply chains. The core question: can the president unilaterally rewrite trade rules, or is that Congress's job? This wasn't just about money. It was a test of the checks and balances at the heart of American democracy. As lawyers prepared their arguments, the nation watched, knowing the outcome would shape U.S. trade policy for decades. The Supreme Court was about to draw a line that would define the limits of presidential power in a globalized world. At the center of this high-stakes legal battle lies a decades-old statute, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, which Congress passed in 1977. This law was crafted during a time of global uncertainty, when lawmakers wanted to ensure the president had the tools to respond swiftly to genuine emergencies that threatened the nation's security or economy. Congress designed IEEPA as an emergency toolkit for the president, intended for rare, extraordinary threats, not for everyday policy disagreements or routine trade disputes. The idea was to give the executive branch flexibility in moments of crisis, but with the understanding that such powers would be used sparingly and only when absolutely necessary. Fast forward to recent years, and the Trump administration invoked IEEPA to justify sweeping tariffs on foreign goods. The administration argued that America's heavy reliance on imports posed a national emergency, and that immediate action was needed to protect the country's economic interests and security. Critics, however, saw this as a massive overreach, an attempt to use a law designed for true crises as a shortcut around Congress and the normal legislative process. They argued that this move set a dangerous precedent, blurring the lines between emergency powers and regular policymaking. For businesses across the country, the impact was immediate and severe. Costs soared, supply chains were disrupted, and many accused the president of bypassing the checks and balances that are supposed to protect both the economy and democracy itself. At the heart of the case was a fundamental question. Was a trade imbalance truly an extraordinary threat, as defined by IEEPA? Or was this a stretch of the law's original intent? If the courts agreed with the administration, it would mean that any president could declare a national emergency over trade at will, dramatically shifting the balance of power between the executive and legislative branches. The judiciary now faced a pivotal decision. Did Congress truly mean to hand over such sweeping economic authority to the president? Or had the law's boundaries been pushed too far? The court's ruling would not only clarify what counts as a true national emergency under IEEPA, but also set a precedent that could shape the limits of presidential power for generations to come, far beyond the realm of trade. The legal journey began with lawsuits from businesses hit hardest by the tariffs. Many of these companies, facing mounting losses and uncertainty, felt they had no choice but to challenge the government's actions in court. Their livelihoods were on the line, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. Lower courts heard passionate arguments from both sides, debating whether the president's actions were lawful or an abuse of executive power. Judges weighed complex legal precedents and constitutional principles, knowing their decisions could set far-reaching standards for future administrations. The case quickly gained national attention, with headlines across the country highlighting the high-stakes battle. Reporters camped outside courthouses, and the public began to realize that the outcome could redefine the limits of presidential authority. The debate raised fundamental questions about the separation of powers and the checks and balances at the heart of American democracy. After winding through the appeals process, with each court offering its own interpretation, it became clear that only the Supreme Court could provide a final, authoritative answer. The legal battle had become too significant for any lower court to resolve conclusively. Legal experts across the nation agreed. The stakes were simply too high for a lower court to have the final say. Scholars and analysts debated the implications on television and in classrooms, emphasizing how the outcome could impact not just this case, but the very structure of government power. When the Supreme Court agreed to hear the case, it marked the beginning of a landmark showdown. The highest court in the land would now decide a question that had divided lawmakers, legal minds, and citizens alike. The nation watched with anticipation as the judiciary prepared to resolve a dispute that would shape the future of presidential authority. News coverage intensified, and Americans everywhere tuned in, aware that history was in the making. The journey underscored the critical role of the courts in balancing power between branches of government. It was a vivid reminder that the judiciary serves as a vital check, ensuring no branch becomes too powerful. Now, all eyes were on the 9 justices to deliver a definitive answer, one that would not only resolve the immediate conflict, but also set a precedent for generations to come. While the legal fight played out, businesses across America felt the pain. Companies relying on imported parts faced soaring costs and tough choices: absorb losses or raise prices. Uncertainty paralyzed investment and planning, slowing economic growth. The stock market grew volatile, reacting to every twist in the case. Small businesses with fewer resources struggled most. Some laid off workers or delayed expansion. Supply chains built over years were suddenly in jeopardy. Many scrambled to find new suppliers or move operations, often at great expense. The legal battle wasn't just a constitutional debate, it was reshaping industries and livelihoods. Everyone, from CEOs to factory workers, looked to the Supreme Court for clarity and relief. At the Supreme Court, both sides presented starkly different visions. The White House argued the president needs broad authority to protect the economy from foreign threats. National security and economic security are intertwined. They claimed IEEPA gives the executive branch wide discretion to define emergencies. Opponents countered that only Congress can regulate commerce and impose taxes. They warned that letting the president use IEEPA for trade would erase Congress's role and set a dangerous precedent. The real question: should one person have the power to reshape trade policy, or must it go through the people's representatives? The court faced a fundamental clash over the limits of executive power. The outcome would define how America's government works in a global economy. On August 6, 2025, the United States Supreme Court delivered a verdict that would reverberate throughout the nation and the world. The anticipation was palpable as justices took their seats, and legal experts, business leaders, and citizens alike waited anxiously for the outcome of a case that had captured headlines for months. In a decisive 6-3 decision, the court struck down the Trump-era tariffs, ruling that the administration had overstepped its authority under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA. The justices made it clear that the executive branch could not use emergency powers as a blanket justification for sweeping trade measures. The majority opinion, read aloud in a packed courtroom, emphasized that while the president does possess significant powers during times of crisis, those powers are not unlimited. The court stated that the Constitution does not grant the president a blank check to regulate trade at will, especially when it comes to issues that have persisted for years. The justices clarified that IEEPA was designed to address sudden, extraordinary threats to national security, not to serve as a tool for addressing long-standing trade disputes. Only genuine emergencies, they said, could justify such sweeping executive action. With the tariffs lifted, businesses across the country breathed a collective sigh of relief. Manufacturers, importers, and exporters saw immediate benefits as uncertainty faded and market stability returned. The decision was celebrated by business owners and investors who had struggled with unpredictable trade barriers. The ruling effectively closed a controversial loophole, sending a strong message that Congress, not the president, holds the primary authority over trade policy. Lawmakers welcomed the decision, seeing it as a reaffirmation of their constitutional role. Going forward, future presidents would need to seek clear and specific authorization from Congress before imposing broad tariffs or making sweeping changes to trade policy. The era of unilateral executive action in trade was over. This landmark decision served as a powerful check on executive power, reinforcing the separation of powers that is fundamental to American democracy. It reminded the nation that no branch of government is above the law. Ultimately, the Supreme Court's ruling reshaped how America will approach trade disputes for years to come, ensuring that future decisions will be made with greater transparency, accountability, and respect for the Constitution. With IEEPA off the table for broad tariffs, the White House must adapt. The president still has targeted tools, like responding to unfair trade practices, but these require investigations and oversight. Sudden, sweeping action is no longer an option. The administration may now need to work with Congress to pass new trade laws. This approach is slower, but more stable and transparent. The Supreme Court's ruling encourages a return to collaboration and compromise in trade policy. The president's power is narrowed, but not eliminated. Future actions will require more evidence and process. America's trade strategy is shifting back to its constitutional roots. This Supreme Court decision isn't just about politics. It affects your daily life. With tariffs lifted, prices on goods from washing machines to electronics should stabilize or fall. The ruling reinforces that no one, not even the president, has unchecked power. Major economic decisions must go through Congress, ensuring debate and accountability. A predictable trade environment encourages businesses to invest and hire, benefiting workers and families. The decision protects against sudden policy shifts that can hurt the economy. It's a reminder that the law applies to everyone, including the most powerful. By clarifying limits on executive authority, the court strengthens democracy and economic stability. This is a victory for a government of laws, not of men. In a divided era, the Supreme Court's decision is a hopeful sign for American democracy. It shows our institutions can resolve even the toughest disputes through law, not politics. The ruling affirms the rule of law and the importance of checks and balances. The judiciary stepped in to limit executive overreach and reaffirm Congress's role. This is how the separation of powers is meant to work, preserving a balanced government. The case proves our system is bigger than any one leader or moment. Ultimately, this ruling is a victory for the American system itself, ensuring our Constitution remains strong. The foundation of our democracy endures, guiding the nation forward.